So I think one reason why Patroclus's body becomes this sort of focal point of what's happening is because Patroclus is incredibly important, and maybe even more important than we might have realized. Hello, and welcome to WINNOW, a couple's close reading of the Iliad and the Odyssey. I'm Owen Gemmer.
I'm Isabella Gemmer. We are married, and we love to talk about books together.
In this podcast, we are working our way through the entirety of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey book by book. This particular episode will cover the Iliad Book 17.
Yep. Another quick one.
Well, another slightly long book where a lot of repetitive things happen. Mm-hmm. We'll definitely talk about this, but there's an interesting momentum change in this book. Whereas the last book we were like, all right, we're getting to the finale. And then we kind of drop off pretty quickly before it sort of spikes back up again. Mm-hmm. I mean, we'll talk about, I think, why that is. But first, let's summarize what happens.
Yes.
So as we do, I've been writing short poems to summarize, and Bella has been doing other forms of summary. Mm-hmm. So do you want to start, or do you want me to?
I guess I can. I've written a very quick summary. I avoided using the letter W. Euphorbus, the guy that first speared Patroclus, tries to strip his armor. Menelaus sees this and attacks and kills Euphorbus. Hector takes Achilles' armor from Patroclus. Menelaus and Ajax push back Hector so he can't take the body, Patroclus' body. Glaucus suggests that they get Patroclus' body and trade it for Sarpedon's. After some back and forth, the Trojans are unable to secure Patroclus' body. Automedon, the guy riding Achilles' chariot, pulled by the immortal horses, dodges Hector's attacks. Menelaus sends Antilochus to tell Achilles of Patroclus' death. The Greeks manage to take Patroclus' body back to the camp.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I was struck by the grammatical stylistic changes that you had to make, because you couldn't use relative clauses. Like you couldn't say the person who did this.
Yeah.
So you ended up replacing relative clauses with participial phrases, right? Him, the guy doing da-da-da with a participle instead of a relative clause. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's a lot of details if you want them, but basically they fight over Patroclus' body.
The whole time.
Yeah. And then I guess we'll get to it. I'll save my thoughts.
Yeah, because that becomes the focal point of my short poem. Again, because I feel like there really is only one thing that happens in this book. There's obviously different ways it happens. I decided to go with a haiku because I think that it is, again, better for just one sort of singular image. A corpse on the ground, the cause of so much fighting. Corpse begets corpses. Because, a lot of people die seemingly just because Patroclus died.
Yeah.
And so I think the main question we want to ask each other and you as you're listening for this book is, why does the body of Patroclus matter? It matters so much, mm-hmm. both, again, for the fact that they all fight pretty intensely over it, and also for the story, why would Homer dedicate an entire book to just kind of one thing fighting over Patroclus's body? It feels like the least kind of dynamic book. There's dynamism within the fight, but it's just there really is only one event.
We know that taking each other's armor is important. We've talked about it, time and time again on this podcast. But Hector is able to take Achilles' armor off of Patroclus's dead body quite early in the book.
Yeah, and even he started that process last book. His helmet fell off, and yeah.
But so we're used to the armor thing, but the armor thing gets settled quite quickly, mm-hmm. and then it all becomes about his body.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of break this into two sections, both in fiction for the particular characters, for Hector and Menelaus and Ajax and all of these guys. Why do they care about risking so much over Patroclus's body? Mm-hmm. And then at the end, we'll step back and think about, from a kind of meta level on the narrative, why would Homer dedicate such a lengthy section of this book to simply Patroclus's body? Mm-hmm. So I think one reason why Patroclus's body becomes this sort of focal point of what's happening is because Patroclus is incredibly important, and maybe even more important than we might have realized. So he's obviously important to Achilles, and I think that at least I theorize plays some sort of role, right? Like everybody here knows that Patroclus and Achilles are close, and that Patroclus is there in Achilles' stead. And so for Achilles to find out that Patroclus is going to die, like everybody knows when this news gets back to Achilles, it's going to be a big deal one way or another, right? The Greeks and the Trojans probably both recognize this is going to be a major like moment in the war. And so it seems like they all then recognize that like whether Achilles gets Patroclus's body back, again, from the Greeks, might soften the blow, or also might sort of exacerbate it depending on perspectives. And so I think there's definitely a part of them, of everybody on both sides, that realizes that like whether Achilles gets the body of his friend back will have a major impact on how he reacts to all of this.
I guess my question to you would be like, because they do take the body back, and in the next book, Achilles does like gets that physical proof that his friend is dead. But like, I guess I don't really see how his actions would have been different if Patroclus's body had not come back.
Well, yeah. I think that's a good question. We see from the other side with Hector and all the Trojans, they seem to want Patroclus's body in order to desecrate it, essentially, to feed it to the dogs, and to gloat over the Greeks, that like we and by extension gloat over Achilles. And so I think if Achilles didn't get the body back, it would be evidence that the Trojans have him, and they are clearly going to be not treating it with respect and reverence.
Yeah, I guess.
And so there's both, from Achilles' perspective, the like, I want my friend's body back so we can give him a proper burial, and I don't want the Trojans to have his body because they will desecrate it in different ways.
I think this is also just good indication that Patroclus is a bigger deal to everyone than I think maybe we had, we had suspected. And he is kind of one of the biggest deal guys to die.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think I forget that like the war had been going on for many years before book one of the Iliad.
Yeah.
Right. And so Ajax and Menelaus and Odysseus, they had all probably fought with Patroclus on many occasions.
Yeah.
It isn't like this is from the beginning and he's just this kind of like nobody who's hanging out with Achilles. Like, yeah, presumably they had all been on the battlefield together. And so, yeah, I think that's a good point, that he clearly, right, he proved last book that he is an incredible warrior. Like, he's not as good as Achilles, but he seems to be up there with Diomedes and with Ajax as the level 2 of the Greeks, surpassed really only by Achilles.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if there's a sense of like, because he is comrade of Achilles, but like, I wonder if there's also a sense in which he is kind of comrade of all. I wonder if the rest of the Greeks really see him as their brother in arms, like someone who really cares, potentially. And I guess even before the little moments we get of Patroclus before he goes out to fight, he does seem to be very compassionate, like how we see his interaction with the one wounded guy who asks him to like tend to his wounds and stuff like that, and those kinds of things. Yeah,
that's a good point, because right, and I think they would also have realized that like Achilles is being stubborn, and by Patroclus like convincing Achilles to let him lead his army out and put on his armor, that like Patroclus is taking on a lot of risk. And I think that everybody else probably recognizes that like he didn't have to do that. He would have been fine to just be like, well, Achilles is my general and I'm listening to him. But he sort of like went out of his way to help them by convincing Achilles of this plan. And so, that probably did win him. He probably had a decent amount of goodwill beforehand, like you said, but that particular action probably also won him a great amount of respect from the rest of the army.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it goes back to this idea that Patroclus is kind of this sacrifice from that Zeus God's eye perspective. Patroclus's death is like the sacrifice that needs to take place for the Greeks to then triumph.
Yeah.
And I wonder to what extent, like do the mortals on the battlefield, like how much do they also kind of get that sense of like this is like a very particular type of death, and in the sense that it is more like sacrificial.
Yeah, because I think the other reason in fiction why this battle over Patroclus's body becomes really important is I think both sides recognize that like the momentum has been shifting pretty rapidly in the last couple of days of the war, and like this could be a real like turning point, because that like whether we get Patroclus's body or not on its own might have some value, but it is more of a like symbolic statement of like we have sort of like conquered this day particularly.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really evident in how it initially starts off as Menelaus going over to Patroclus's body to protect it, and then Euphorbus, the person who had initially struck Achilles, saying like, no, he's my kill. Mm-hmm. And then so it's going to be like a one-on-one duel, but then Euphorbus sort of gets scared and calls over Hector and others, and then Menelaus sees the others coming and then calls over Ajax and others. And so it escalates pretty quickly from like this one-on-one duel to then like, oh, all of the main characters are all here right now. And it becomes actually kind of the whole armies fighting over this body, not just a kind of, couple people. There was even a Homeric simile describing, like comparing the way that they're fighting over the body to like people stretching out like an ox hide.
Yeah.
And like just like stretching it. I don't think we're supposed to take that literally of like there were 4 people who all had a hand on Patroclus, stretching his limbs apart, but this idea that like the entire army was like gathered in this common pursuit to sort of tug back and forth on this.
Yeah. As when a man gives to his underlings a mighty bull's hide that still drips with fat to stretch, and they stand round it in a circle and pull it in all directions, and the moisture soon disappears, and the fat seeps in, as many men are pulling it at once, and thus the whole hide is completely stretched. Just so, within that little space, the body was dragged in all directions by both armies.
Yeah, and so I think that they all recognize that like this is a symbolic kind of turning point as for the momentum of the whole war. Patroclus himself is important, but then it's just like it's given even more importance just by the sort of state of the war as a whole at this moment.
It's also fun to just remember that it's still daytime, and it hasn't been night since book 10. Mm-hmm. So it's been daytime for a long time. Yeah.
The other just funny note is, right, we've said it's the whole armies sort of fighting over this, but if you remember, Odysseus, Diomedes, and Agamemnon do not come up at all in this book.
Yeah,
and I assume
still
that's
wounded.
Right.
Yeah.
But I find it interesting that Hector also got wounded a couple books ago, and he's right back in it. And so again, this isn't to like call Odysseus and the others like weak, but it is interesting that their injuries take them out of the battle for much longer than Hector's injuries took him out of the battle.
Yeah. Well, Hector is infused with Zeus's adrenaline injections.
Yes.
So he's kind of running on a different energy.
Yeah. And so I think there is another moment in this between sort of Hector and Zeus, not directly, but Hector is essentially, like getting really excited about this. He's already sort of stripped Achilles' armor off of Patroclus's body. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, if I can, get his body as well, like feed it to the Trojan dogs, he's like, again, in this momentum way, he seems to see this as a major, major blow to the Greeks. And so he's getting like, again, pretty high on his horse about like, I just killed the best of the Achaeans, mm-hmm. and I will continue to sort of rampage forward. And Zeus, mm-hmm. watching on, again, knowing his sort of grand plan for all of this, has quite the reaction.
Yes. Zeus is looking down at Hector and he says, "Poor fool, you are not thinking about death at all, but death is near you. You are putting on the deathless armor of the best of men, at whom all others tremble. You have killed the brave and gentle comrade of this man, and you have wrongly taken up his arms and dressed your head and body in his armor. For now I plan to grant you success as compensation, because you will never go home from battle, and Andromache will never take from you the splendid arms of great Achilles, son of Peleus.
It's really, again, foreboding in ways that Zeus has already been foreboding that, like, you are going to die. But I think here Zeus is a little bit mournful, right? So the beginning of that speech, poor fool, or other translations do it, poor wretch or something like that.
Yeah.
If we look at the Greek in the little segment we like to call Greek time.
Greek time, baby.
The word that is translated as poor fool is just one word. It is delos, which, if you look it up in a dictionary, the first definition that comes up is actually coward.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wait, what? That seems like a weird translation. But then as you read further, this is one of those words that can mean different things given different contexts. And oftentimes in Homer specifically, there's usually like a sub definition in the dictionary for like in a compassionate sense. Mm-hmm. And so there are ways in which this word can be used as criticism, like calling somebody a coward or a wretch or a fool, but it can also be used more sort of like, compassionately or mournfully of like poor fool, poor thing, poor wretch. Mm-hmm. Where there's this like ironic sense of I know that you are this way and you don't, and there's pity in that.
Yeah. I find the part that Zeus says, you have wrongly taken up his arms. So from Zeus's perspective, Hector has wrongly taken Achilles' armor, which kind of reminds me of like in Harry Potter with the Elder Wand, how like in order for the armor to rightly be yours, like you have to be the one to like defeat its owner. Mm-hmm. And so there's kind of this, which is how like duels and like the Elder Wand and like the wand's allegiance, that kind of stuff works in Harry Potter. But how Achilles has like, he gave Patroclus permission to wear his armor, but it's not like it belonged to Patroclus.
Right.
And
right, you were wearing Achilles' armor without having defeated Achilles.
Yeah, he didn't defeat him. He just as a show of like comradeship. Mm-hmm. And then when Hector is pointed out as Patroclus dies, he's like, you're not really the one who killed me anyways.
Right.
Like Apollo kind of did some trickery, and then someone else is the one who first stabbed me. So like, you're not even the one who's really killing me, Hector. And then Hector then takes the armor from Patroclus, but it's like, it's not real, like, it's not his,
Right. In the same way that we get the reveal at the end of the Deathly Hallows that like, Voldemort, you were never the true owner because it was Draco who disarmed Dumbledore, and then I disarmed Draco, and
It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of like it's just like that. Like this armor isn't really even rightfully yours.
Right.
So once again, like Hector's just like, he's really on his high horse.
Yeah. And I think this is spoiling a little bit ahead, but like, does Hector not also have the foresight to think that like Achilles is going to be like happy to see him in his armor? Like Achilles looking at Hector wearing his own armor, that's going to anger him even more. Like, do you really want to add more fuel to Achilles' fire? Like you've already killed his best friend and now you're putting on his armor. Like, come on, like have a little bit of foresight as to how Achilles is going to react to this. Mm-hmm. So I think, in terms of momentum, you had also brought up this moment towards the end, another simile about how all of the Greeks kind of in this moment unify sort of behind, again, Patroclus's body and in this fight.
We've talked about what Patroclus's body and fighting over the body symbolizes maybe to the characters in the story, but from like a meta perspective, what does fighting over the body like do to the narrative, and like why would Homer or the author of this story, like why would he include these moments
for such a long time? Again, like we get a whole book dedicated to really just this fight.
Yeah, and I do think so. A passage I'll read in a second, I think proves to show that it actually does a lot to solidify the Greeks for this common purpose and this common goal on the battlefield of protect the body, you know, instead of what a lot of the opening books of the Iliad gave us on the battlefield, which was like individuals kind of doing individual conquests, you know, like all throughout the battlefield.
Ajax is fighting on the left flank and Odysseus is in the center and Menelaus is on the right flank or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So in contrast to that, right, we've got all these Greeks just like with one goal, and it's just to protect this one guy's body, you know, which is such a contrast from the beginning of the Iliad. It shows that people's priorities are different now. It shows that it's less about spoils and what you can get, and it's kind of about protecting each other's dignity in a sense. So like, so things have gotten much more real and not as like floofy, you know, not as much about the spoils and such.
Yeah.
So I shall read this passage. Packed closely side by side, the men fell dead, the Trojans, noble allies, and the Greeks. The battle cost the Greeks some loss of blood, although far fewer died, because they always kept close to one another in the throng and saved each other's lives. They fought like fire, and you would think the sun and moon were gone, because the battle of the finest fighters around the dead Patroclus was so shrouded in fog.
And I think that points to both sides as well. It's not just the Greeks who unify around this. The Trojans also are as sort of single-minded in their goal of that. And so, right, both, I think that goes back to my previous point about both sides recognizing that, like, this could be the sort of, like, decisive turning point of this whole thing.
Yeah, I guess the Greeks are, though, they're much more like, I think they are a little bit more united and focused. The Trojans might in general be moving as one, but Hector,
he has to bribe them again.
But Hector seems to be kind of flitty on the battlefield. Like he's got the armor at the beginning, and he's wearing he's wearing Achilles' armor, and then he kind of keeps trying to see what else he can get. Like it's kind of like a minor B plot, but Achilles' chariot and the two immortal horses that were pulling it is still out on the battlefield. And
that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah.
And so the Trojans as a whole, they might have the goal of fighting for the body, but Hector is very like, he's like, I've already got the armor. What if I get the chariot?
That's a good point. Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And so it's like an inverse thing happening, and he's actually getting more greedy and less concerned with what his troops are doing. Yeah,
no, I stand corrected because I had forgotten about the chariot stuff. And yeah, do you remember? There's like a moment where like the horses themselves become characters.
Yeah,
it like breaks, and I was like, what? I like had to like reread a couple sections. Like, wait, this is talking about the horses. I was just,
yeah, and it and in that moment when it becomes clear that like Hector's new goal is to try to procure the horses and the chariot, it's like all the forces of the universe conspire to not let him get that.
Yeah.
Even Zeus, I'm pretty sure there's a moment where even Zeus like is sort of talking to the horses.
Yes.
And he's like, you're so immortal and perfect and beautiful. I can't believe now you're stuck down here. I can't believe I let you, hang out with these mortals. Like he's like has a lot of compassion for these immortal horses.
Yeah.
And yeah, like everybody is kind of like, we're not going to let Hector take the horses. Like that would be absolutely insane.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. So I think the other like meta level reason why we might get such a long pause talking about this is again, a tension building technique from the narrative perspective, right? Like we got a hint of the tension with, Patroclus going out onto the battlefield, and we know Achilles has, commanded him to like only chase them off the ships. And the narrator throughout book 17 is pretty constant in reminding us that like Achilles doesn't know that Patroclus is dead at this point, that like they're far away from the ships. Achilles has no idea what's going on. And the book ends with them like sending messengers back, like, we should probably go tell Achilles about this. But it's very clear that Achilles is sort of outside of this potential happenings. And so I think, at least from my perspective, there's a lot of tension that gets built where if everybody else cares this much about Patroclus's body, how much more extreme is Achilles' reaction going to be? And so it keeps, again, building that, like, if everybody here is fighting over this one body and like they have even less connection to Patroclus than Achilles does, when he eventually does find out it's going to be cataclysmic.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and so I think this has the impact of making the reader pause and sort of not get answers to the questions we want, where when Patroclus dies at the end of book 16, we immediately are eager to know how Achilles is going to react. And yet Homer is sort of saying like, nope, not going to give that to you yet. I'm going to build this even more extremely and make it really clear that like, oh, Achilles is going to have a super, super crazy reaction because everybody else is already having a crazy reaction. And so it makes, I think, Achilles' sort of explosion of rage and grief even more potent when we get this pause.
Yeah, it's also good to remember, I can't remember if I brought this up before or not, but that the Iliad wasn't really meant to be read book by book slowly, like one book per week. Mm-hmm. It was meant to be binge listened to, you know, in the course of like a couple long sittings. So when we get a week like this where we get a book that feels like it's dragging out the point, in real time, it would be dragging, or it would be sort of lengthening the tension.
Yeah.
In a good way, as opposed to when we sit down for the week to prepare for the next episode and we're like, oh, not that much happened. But you have to remember in context.
Yeah. In the grand scheme of things, the distance between Patroclus dying and Achilles' reaction, you know, it's not going to be that big of a difference. Whereas for us, it's like, oh, a whole week has passed.
Yeah.
So again, we ourselves now are playing into this by anticipating Achilles' reaction, which we do get in book 18. We will see Achilles' response to this because, again, at the end of book 17, a messenger has been sent. And so there is this, like, we are going away from the battlefield back to the ships. And then, kind of all of the Greeks to the end are like, we should probably pause for the night. We should get the body, get away. Like, things are going poorly. Ajax even has a moment of like, oh, it seems like Zeus is helping all of their like arrows and spears hit. The gods probably want this to not go our way right now. Like, we're not going to win the whole war right now. So let's pause, let's reset. Mm-hmm. And so the Greeks themselves like are kind of in this process of retreating so that they can sort of recoup.
Yeah.
And they also note, again, this is another sort of anticipation for the next book, that like, even if Achilles did find out and he got upset and wanted to join, he doesn't have his armor. He can't fight without his armor.
Yeah.
Whatever is he going to do? Yes. Oh, dear reader, yes. Whatever is Achilles going to do without any armor? Mm-hmm. How will he get more?
Yep.
Tune in to book 18 to find out.
Yep. Until then, happy reading.
Happy reading.